Good afternoon, everybody. We're just going to give it a few moments while Zoom actually starts to let people in, because we know there's often a bit of a lag time between pressing the go button and everyone being allowed in from the lobby. For anyone who hasn't come across me or the DPA previously, my name is Elizabeth Anderson. I'm the Chief Executive over here at the Digital Poverty Alliance. The DPA is a charity. We bring together a whole coalition of different types of organisations, whether that is business, big and small, government, local or national, charities, community-led, or again, nationally focused, and different types of institutions such as universities, schools, health trusts, and many more. One of our absolute flagship programmes is our Tech4Families scheme. I'm very excited that we're going to be talking about some of the research that has come out of this scheme, which is generously supported by Currys and, more to the point, their customers, who provide incredible donations to help us reach thousands of families with laptops, connectivity, and resources as well. So I'm going to ask our two amazing panelists today to just briefly introduce themselves, because both of them have been so integral to this piece of work. So Catrin.
Hi, so I'm Catrin Hale. I'm our Group Social Impact Manager at Currys. So that means I get to manage all of the work streams that aim to tackle digital poverty. The flagship one that we have, of course, is Tech4Families, which we do in collaboration with DPA, and the exciting reason we're all here today.
Amazing. And we are, again, so grateful to Currys for working on this with us over the past couple of years and looking forward. And Becky.
Thank you very much. I'm Dr. Becky Faith, and I'm a research fellow at the Institute of Development Studies and the Digital Futures at Work Research Centre, both based at the University of Sussex. And a lot of my research is about digital exclusion in various forms. We were privileged to carry out an independent evaluation of the Tech4Families programme with my colleague Kevin Hernandez, who's now left us to go and work on digital inclusion at the United Nations. So it's great to be here.
Fantastic. And I can see we've still got lots of attendees joining us. We'd love to know who you are as well. So please do pop in the chat what your name is, where in the country or the world you may be from, and what organisation, if any, you are representing today. As we go through, we're going to have a bit of a chat here as part of the webinar, but we also would love to include towards the end some of your questions. So there is a Q&A function down at the bottom of the screen. Do press that and pop any questions that you have in there, and we'll come to as many as we have time for. So I would hope that most of the people on the call do have an understanding of what digital poverty is. We talk about it in terms of people not having access to online services when, where, and how they need to. But perhaps starting with yourself, Becky, given your research, how have you seen that landscape of digital poverty evolve in the UK over recent years? And how have you seen the Tech4Families research playing into addressing some of those changes?
Thanks, Elizabeth. And I'd like to say thanks to the DPA and thanks to Currys for allowing us to be part of this programme. And I should just, to kick off, I should say that we were contracted as independent researchers, that we didn't set out to find lots of great things about the programme, that the research was carried out very rigorously and carried out in compliance with our university's ethical guidelines. So digital poverty has become part of the kind of landscape of the UK in recent years, especially during the pandemic. So in the past kind of 15 years, we've seen lots of attention paid to kind of digital exclusion. And I think prior to the pandemic, people thought digital exclusion was fixed, that they saw lots of people with smartphones and assumed that, okay, everyone can get online. It's all fixed now, that everyone has access to the right devices they need and to the amount of connectivity they need. And actually what I think the pandemic did, and we were carrying out different aspects of research all through the pandemic, was highlighted how digital obviously now isn't a luxury, and it could be seen as a kind of human right. It's an essential utility. So in the field we're talking about here, in regards to education, we saw kids during the pandemic who weren't able to do their schoolwork because they couldn't get online. And obviously this is correlated with poverty. And the way we see digital poverty in the research that we've done other research beyond this for the British Academy over the last few years, is that there can be this, what we call a vicious cycle. So we know in general in society, the poor pay more, that the poor pay more for utilities and for lots of other aspects of life. Life is just generally more expensive, ironically, the poorer you are. And this is definitely the case when it comes to digital access, that people without kind of the kind of digital access that you need to be able to check prices, to use apps like Too Good To Go to get cheap food, to find the cheapest broadband. If you haven't got the digital skills and consistent access to find out that information, it can have a negative impact on your life, and it can make you, it can actually have a bad economic impact. And also people can experience other forms of exclusion, such as services not being designed in the language that they speak, or services not being designed in an accessible format. So we think digital poverty should be seen alongside kind of fuel poverty and other issues like that as a kind of key enabler of a decent life. And in terms of the Tech4Families scheme, one of the things that shocked, I think, myself and Kevin when we went into doing this research, we did a big kind of desk review, which is kind of fed into the final report. We were shocked that there hadn't been more attention paid to the impacts on children when it came to not having the right digital access to do homework, to study at home in their own time. That actually, I think this is a kind of neglected area of digital poverty and digital exclusion. And so I think that's why it's even more impressive that Currys do fund this programme. And as we'll go through, we'll hear more about the findings from this research, that hopefully what this research will do is kind of shine a spotlight on the fact that people really haven't been looking at the fact that children are now required, especially kids in secondary school, to have some kind of decent internet access and a good device to work on to do their homework, just to get through their GCSEs. And I'm really hoping that this research will kind of kickstart that conversation. Thank you.
That's such an important introduction there, Becky, and certainly something that we find is that there are lots of myths around what digital poverty means and how it impacts different people, whether that is, as you say, that luxury poverty, through to the idea that, you know, all children were provided with everything they could need through the pandemic, and that has persisted, which we know is one of those myths that people continue to hold on to. And I mean, Catrin, from your perspective and Currys' perspective, why do you, as an organisation, as a company, feel that actually it's the digital poverty that is so important to be tackled, especially for families?
Yeah, so our vision at Currys is to help everyone enjoy amazing technology. And what's become apparent, again, as Dr. Becky Faith said, as the back of COVID, is that not everyone is able to enjoy amazing technology. Not everyone has access to the right technology. And I think it was through COVID when we first started talking to the Learning Foundation that this was hugely recognised, I think, within our business. And so we were able to become one of the founding partners of the DPA. We sell tech and we want to make sure that everyone can use it properly, but also that those who can't access it are able to get their hands on it. And so working with you guys, you're kind of our critical friends and our ears and eyes on the ground, and you tell us, you know, what the need is, where the need is. And we really look to you to kind of help us shape where we should be placing that focus. And we really see that resonate with colleagues and customers. They really want to be able to help, as we do as a business. So yeah, it's become hugely important. And as time goes on, and as we share the results of reports like this, colleagues and customers are getting more behind it.
And actually, it is this kind of research, I think, that really starts to uncover what digital poverty means for real people, because it's one of those terms you can sort of work out what it means, but it doesn't necessarily immediately spring to mind all the different ways it affects people. I suspect, well, certainly for me there were, but I suspect for both of you as well, there were some particularly surprising and impactful findings, quotes, statistics that really came out from the research. Could you each just share maybe a couple of the findings that maybe most hit you? Maybe kicking off with Becky.
Yeah, thanks. I've been researching digital inequality for years now. This is kind of my bread and butter. But I think I was shocked about what a big impact it was making, a negative impact, not having access previously to technology had on the young people in terms of just being able to do their schoolwork. I should say that we carried out, with the help of Imi from DPA, thank you, Imi, we carried out a quantitative survey, which also had space for people to enter kind of feedback on the programme at sort of monthly stages throughout the programme. And we also did some interviews as well. And I think what was really shocking to me was that 30% of our survey respondents couldn't do their schoolwork at all prior to getting their laptop. Like, they couldn't do their homework at all. And 58% at the baseline, when they just received the laptop, were trying to do schoolwork on another device, mainly on a smartphone. And a lot of our work has been about the limitations of people using smartphones or tablet computers as a kind of substitute for laptops or bigger devices, mainly because if anybody who's ever tried to kind of write a CV or complete a complicated form on a smartphone, it just doesn't let you do it. It's what we call the affordances of the device. We've published kind of academic research on this. So I think what was shocking for me was the amount of kids who were trying to do this, who either couldn't do their schoolwork at all, or who were trying to do their schoolwork on a smartphone. And when we asked them about the kind of different platforms they're having to use, there's always, especially for secondary school kids in particular, there's a lot of different platforms they have to access. It's not like you just go into Microsoft and do everything within Teams or whatever. There's lots of different kind of proprietary platforms for maths and English and so on and so forth. And they just said it's just no good trying to do their work on a smartphone. It just wasn't working properly. So I think just the fact that there's a kind of this massive hidden educational inequalities that has been kind of hiding there in plain sight, really, that will have an impact on kind of generational inequalities, because you get these kids who are not only being impacted while they're at school in that they can't do their homework properly and they're really struggling, or they have to kind of stay behind at school to do homework on computers there. But then it also has this kind of sequential impact for when they leave school and they haven't been able to get the kind of digital skills that you just pick up when you're having to use Teams or use Excel or create PowerPoints on a computer, given that there's this big kind of digital skills gap. So that's got implications for kind of generational inequalities, actually, that I think we should be really, really concerned about. And in terms of the kind of positive side of things, one of the things that really surprised us that we weren't looking out for was the benefits for kind of neurodiverse kids who might struggle in a classroom because it's too noisy or it just doesn't give them the space they need. So children with ADHD, there's a couple of children whose parents we interviewed had ADHD or on the autism spectrum. And for them, just being able to have a computer at home that they could work on separate from their siblings or separately, just in a peaceful environment at their own pace, in an environment they could control. I think that's, again, another kind of form of inequality that's kind of going on in plain sight and made such a massive difference. The parents were so grateful just to have access to this device that meant that their kids stood a fighting chance. So yeah, there was quite a lot that was quite shocking to me about this research, but those are the two things that really stood out.
Thank you, Becky. And Catrin.
Very similar. I think there was a statistic in the report that said 80% of secondary school age children are set online homework at least once a week. And there's a quote in there, I think, where one of the parents is asked, well, how was your child getting on? How were they doing it? And the quote just says, yeah, they weren't. And, you know, as Becky's then alluded to, the long-term impact that then has when they can't complete their homework. I think that's been eye-opening and quite shocking. One of the positives I've taken away is that the scheme is called Tech4Families, obviously, and you have to have the school-age child to get the laptop, but it is showing that it benefits the whole family when having the device in the house. So again, there are quotes in there from parents who maybe have 2 or more children, and it means they can do their homework at the same time. And having children myself, and knowing kind of getting that window when they're motivated to learn and they're not too tired and they're not hungry, and they're in the right environment, makes a huge difference to the motivation to learn and actually getting them to do their homework. And families are now able to do that. But then also when the children have gone to bed, there were parents, you know, there's a teaching assistant in the report who's been able to complete her Senko training in the evenings when the children are in bed. So the situation that the whole family will now be facing is more positive because of the device that we're getting into their house. So that was a positive takeaway.
Definitely. And I think alongside that as well, something that we feel very strongly about as the DPA is that technology actually, it's not an end in itself. It's a means to an end. It's there to facilitate what people need to do in a growingly digital world. And I think one of the stats that Becky and her team found were that 92% of parents agreed that their children were now just more motivated to learn and more interested in their education. And that's got to be a fantastic benefit of the scheme. On the flip side, though, what it also shows us is that it's a massive disincentive to have that inquiring mind and that curiosity and to be getting into education if you are digitally excluded. So it's a positive and a negative all at the same time, but it's a real positive of the scheme and what can be achieved by providing people with the kit and the connectivity and the support that they need. And I guess following on from that, Becky, what particular trends have you started to observe in not just the digital access, but also the digital literacy? And I'd wrap into that the media literacy, the staying safe, the that questioning and critical thinking, particularly in underserved communities over the last couple of years.
I think one of the things that this research has really highlighted for me is that it's the importance of having, for kids to have kind of unfettered creative access to devices. That I think the children have actually genuinely got quite good instincts when it comes to safety, and I think it's on the digital safety, and it's on the school curriculum, and it's there are resources available. But I think to really develop digital literacy, you need that. You can't develop it if you've got like half an hour out after school when you're using a computer at school that and you're keeping an eye on the clock. Actually having access at home, where there were kids who were developing skills like PowerPoint, and you think that that's a really, really essential digital skill for work now, that it's really, really important to be able to kind of present ideas clearly, and it helps lots of kind of associated skills as well. So children were developing those sort of modern office skills, like using Teams, using Google, like shared workspaces. And these are all part of, for those of you who are kind of familiar with them, that the kind of foundational digital skills that surveys like the Lloyds Bank survey show that a lot of people in the UK are lacking these digital skills for work. So when it comes to developing those skills and developing that kind of media literacy, I think having just more time to spend on a device was really, really important. And some of the kids were saying that, because we asked them about, well, what were they doing when they couldn't do something, or when they couldn't figure out how to make something work, that they were going and looking it up. And one of the mums said, oh, he's become the kind of, her son had become the tech support in the household because they just had more time to kind of experiment and do research. So yeah, other things that people were talking about, young people were talking about, is like developing research skills as well, which are really, really, because you have to do it for your kind of history homework in GCSEs, and just going and looking things up and like figuring out what's truth and what's not truth online. to be able to kind of develop those skills, it's fine to have the kind of guidance and get it in the classroom. You need that kind of sort of just free access at home to be able to kind of look around and experiment and see what's online. And that's why you need to have a kind of useful, a kind of functioning device at home, and the kind of connectivity which enables you to kind of not be kind of rationing your time online. So I think it is really, really, really important.
And something that we have felt very strongly about, again, is the fact that there's lots of support, or there tends to be lots of support available in city locations. We have, working with Currys, focused this scheme mainly on rural and coastal areas. So across all 4 of the home nations, there are 7 areas where people can apply as long as they meet the criteria for the scheme. What did you mainly find, Becky, in the conversations that you were having with parents in obviously quite different locations? Were some of the main challenges that they were self-identifying in terms of actually accessing technology and the internet prior to being able to receive a laptop through Tech4Families?
It's poverty. I think it is just not being able to afford it is the main, and we know this generally from research. It's poverty, and that the other issues that in larger families, or even just in a family with sort of 2 kids, that you might have one device. You might have one device in a family. Then what happens when one of the children goes off to university and they absolutely need to take that? That a couple of the parents said this, that older siblings had taken the laptop with them when they went to university because it was kind of incontrovertible that they needed it. And so I think in larger families as well, there's just the issue that you might have kind of sibling rivalry between, and actually needing more devices in one household just so everybody can be doing their homework. And I have to say, I think the work that DPA have done in identifying the locations for the program to be carried out, I thought was absolutely brilliant, because then we started looking for the desk review at and this data is in the report about kind of variance in connectivity between both in different regions of the UK, and the kind of level of digital skills. And it's clear that even within such a kind of just within the UK, that there are these kind of really big regional variations in connectivity. And I think, as anybody who works in the digital exclusion space will know, that there's these big, you might have areas of regions where there's really great work being carried out on digital exclusion, like in Manchester. Andy Burnham's authority has done really brilliant work on digital exclusion, but there's big regional gaps. So you might get big areas of the UK where there aren't digital champions, there aren't schemes happening. So it's really, really patchy. And I just have to say something about schools as well, that one of the things that really shocked me, that we asked all the parents that we spoke to about, well, did the schools check in with you? Has the school ever said, oh, has your child got a device, and then offered them a device if they didn't have one? And it was really, the schools just don't, as a rule, there doesn't seem to be a kind of nationwide policy of schools checking in with parents to see whether the pupils have got the connectivity they need. And in fact, I know my son's at school in Brighton, and I know one of the schools in Brighton where all the kids were given, had to get Chromebooks. Then they all had to give them back at the beginning of the summer holidays, so they couldn't actually do any studying over the summer holidays. So that's something that I think is really patchy. It's about the kind of schools engaging with parents to see, have they actually got the connectivity they need. And then yeah, some kids were kind of staying behind after school, and some colleges, one parent said, oh yeah, the college nearby is offering devices, but there doesn't seem to, even though there was a big thing during the pandemic of schools kind of handing out devices, there doesn't seem to be kind of nationwide policies about ensuring that pupils have got the connectivity they need. And that might be just because schools can't afford it, or there isn't a kind of infrastructure in place. But that did seem really, really shocking to me, that one of the reasons that the parents were so grateful is because the schools, in a few cases, schools had told them about this scheme, but they hadn't been able to kind of offer devices where that wasn't available.
And certainly one of the policy recommendations that we've drawn actually from the research and from the findings, and exactly that kind of finding, is that we do need not just a national strategy around this, but we need schools and we need head teachers, we need governors, we need multi-academy trusts to be really picking this up and not waiting for that national strategy, really picking this up and looking at how teachers and support staff in school environments can be checking in on the level of digital access, digital confidence within the home, because it isn't something that happens routinely. There's some fantastic schools that do that, but it doesn't necessarily make that the norm.
And I just say one more thing about that, which is that quite a lot of the research that we've done, myself and Kevin have done over the past few years, have been about this kind of gap that exists between people's perceptions and even kind of statistics on connectivity and the kind of reality of what this means in people's everyday day-to-day lives. So we did some work looking at the Office for National Statistics. We did a data commentary on this, which you can read on the Digit website, and the ONS was kind of counting people as being online if they'd looked at the internet, used the internet once in the last 3 months. But whereas these children being asked to use the internet every day, really, to get to access all these different programs that they're having to use for school. So part of it is, and this might be the issue with education more generally, that there's this gap that, again, people see everybody with smartphones and think everybody's online, and that's just such a misapprehension, and it kind of masks these kind of very real inequalities, which this program's done so much to address.
And I could easily do a 5-minute speech on my feelings on that ONS data, but I am going to save that for a whole different webinar. And I think that the more that we talk about this program, and we're going to get a little bit into some of the practical implementation, and this is a question I answer a lot, so I'm going to hand it over to Catrin. How, just for the benefit of everyone who's watching this today, how have Currys been able to support us at the DPA and the families with this scheme, make this happen and grow it in the way that we have jointly?
Yeah, I think that's an important word. It is joint. It's very much a partnership that we have. It's only right that the DPA are the people who look at where the need is greatest, where we can actually make a big difference, and work with those families who are getting the laptops. From the Currys side, it really unites colleagues and customers. So it's predominantly funded by customer donations, which we take through. It's another charity called Pennies. So in store at the till point, it'll ask you if you want to make a donation. Depending on how much you're spending, it'll either be a 25p donation or a 50p donation, which is why it's called Pennies. That it's not big amounts at all. And those really stack up. So over the last 2 and a bit years that we've been working together with Pennies, over 1 million customers have made that decision that yes, this is something they want to support, and have ticked yes and made their micro donation. So, by all of those people coming together and making those small donations, it's making a huge difference to the lives of people who are getting the laptops. We've also got colleagues who then take part. So just yesterday, we had a team of colleagues run the Great North Run to raise money for the DPA. And I'm sure there'll be a plug later, but with End Digital Poverty Day coming up later this week, we've got a lot more activity happening, and colleagues will be getting behind the cause and raising more money. So all of that comes together to then be able to provide the laptops that go out to the families. So as part of our social impact principles that we have at Currys, we look at how we can use our expertise, our capability, and our size to have the biggest impact. And obviously we're a retailer and we have access to lots of laptops, but we've also got a huge distribution network. So that means that we're then able to provide a mix of refurbished laptops and new laptops. So the environmental impact is reduced by also using refurb. Also, they're great quality laptops and absolutely perfect for what the families need. And then we're able to use our distribution networks to get those out directly to the families who are benefiting. We've worked together to produce a paper one-pager, I guess you'd call it, on how to switch your laptop on, how to get the best use out of it, and how to signpost then to other services that might be needed. And then we also looked at providing some antivirus so that the computers or the laptops are protected. So yeah, it's a real partnership. So yeah, the Currys' role is to kind of raise the money and then get the laptops out, and use the DPA's expertise as to who we should be supporting.
Thank you so much, Catrin. And just to sort of fill in how we run the application process for that, we have the 7 locations around the UK, which Joel has very kindly copied into the chat if anyone's going, oh, does it cover my area? Families with children aged 4 to 16 are able to apply to us direct, either online or by texting us to get a paper form sent out to them. Or there's locations that carry the paper forms so that people can drop in and pick those up. They provide a verifier, so we never ask for any means testing, we never ask for any financial information or anything like that. This is about somebody with a trusted professional relationship with the child, a teacher, a family worker, a local elected representative. We've got a list of around 8 different roles who confirm that that need is genuine and they've spoken to the family, and in their professional opinion, this is real. From there, they enter onto the waiting list, and then, as Catrin says, we use the funds that are raised within the stores to be able to buy those laptops and get them out. And the distribution power of Currys in terms of being able to get thousands of laptops from their warehouse out to people landing at their home is absolutely incredible. And we receive some fantastic messages that come back from people when those laptops do arrive. And I think whilst we've got lots of examples of the happy messages that we receive, it's the independence of Becky's research that really highlights what this means to families, to parents, to some of the teenagers. Could you maybe share some examples from your research of how families have benefited in different ways from using that technology?
Yeah. And I just think one of the things that I need to really emphasize is that we didn't go looking for good news, that we were critical digital researchers, and that we've got a kind of professional responsibility to help people to do really independent research. So I think of just picking up, there's a couple of examples that come to mind, is that one of the things that you might think when Elizabeth said, oh, you can apply if you've got a kind of 4 or 5-year-old. One of the things that was really surprising to me was that children in primary school were being asked to do kind of phonics training and that kind of thing on computers. So I think that was really surprising to me, because I knew just from my own experience as a parent that when you get into secondary school, it's when it really kicks in. But there were kids who were having to do 5 and 7-year-olds having to do online homework, which was really I thought that was really extraordinary, actually. But it really makes a difference, and it kind of counteracted something that I thought that it would just be good for secondary school kids. Just one of the things that I thought was worth mentioning is that a family where, just to say, this isn't just about skills, kind of, oh yeah, let's get everybody into learning Microsoft Teams. Actually, that creative skills are really important. So there was a teenager who we interviewed who was using it for online music lessons that they hadn't been able to access previously. Kids who were kind of writing stories, kids who were kind of practicing dance, taking videos and watching YouTube videos to do their dance moves. So I think that's really important, that you can think about, okay, it's really good for kind of just those kind of purely digital skills. So that really made a difference. Some families from Ukraine who were able to still carry on kind of connecting with the school in Ukraine that they were part of. So I think families who've got kind of additional needs that might not be supported in mainstream education, so families where you're learning additional languages that you might have to go to language school at weekends and getting support from that for having the computer. So I think and those kind of, again, those more kind of hidden inequalities, was really great to hear that they'd been impacted really positively by getting access to this laptop. And I think the difficult thing for me then is to think about all the families who haven't got the laptops, that with all the great work that Currys and the DPA are doing, it's a kind of matter of like hundreds or thousands of laptops being distributed, and actually that what's this program has shown is the kind of a big kind of unmet need for these devices. So I think those are the big impacts there. And again, as I was saying, like the impacts on bigger families, the impacts on families with kids with kind of special needs or some kind of additional learning needs, that really, I can see the importance of that. And we did, like I said, we didn't set out to look for these particular case studies, but they really stood out for us.
And really, following on from that, Becky, I mean, we 100% agree. One of our goals at the DPA is to help as many people as we can in terms of delivery, because every child, every family helped, that is absolutely transformational for them and for their life and for their outcomes. But the other side of our work is all around advocacy. So how do we find those long-term sustainable solutions that don't need to rely on customers making a 25p donation, don't need to rely on goodwill? Actually, how do we solve these issues? And in looking to do that, exactly, it's programs like this that help us to gather the research and gather the evidence to be able to make that case to different parts of society, whether that's government, whether it's industry, whether it's schools, whoever. What are some of the strategies that you maybe pulled out from how Tech4Families was working that really ensure that the technology being provided can be used to its fullest potential? That is kind of the standout of not just maybe how children are using it, but also how parents are using it.
I think one of the things that really impresses me about the DPA's approach is that you really go all out to make sure that you don't have to be online to get access to these devices. I think that's really, really important. It's one of the questions I think we asked straight away when we were doing this research. And actually, I don't know if you've covered all the approaches that you do, just make the fact that you make sure that there's always a kind of offline means to get one of these devices is really important. And in terms of the devices that were provided, we were quizzing people about whether it was fast enough and about whether it had all that people had the connectivity they needed. And actually, one of the kind of good things that people were saying was that the device was fast enough, and that they were, when something went wrong, and this kind of ties back into that issue about having this kind of unmonitored or just like unfettered access to a computer, just that experience of being able to kind of look things up and fiddle around a bit and look things up on YouTube means that people are developing, the young people and their parents are developing digital skills. So I think it comes down to this thing that as a society at the moment, that the digitally excluded are having to rely on going to libraries, which are kind of currently really under threat and giving you really limited connectivity, and there'll only be a certain amount of devices, or they're reliant on kind of tablet distribution schemes. And while we see that there is a place for, say, older people being given tablet computers because they're really accessible and they're good for kind of quite basic needs, I think ensuring that young people have access to laptops, I think, is really, really important. And I think that's one of the things that this research has really highlighted for me.
Yes, we frequently talk about keyboarded devices and the fact that, yes, that is what really empowers people to be able to not just consume content, but actually create it. And that might be creating a CV, but it's actually being able to put words on the page. If anyone has ever tried to travel up and down the railway line and you've not taken your laptop, or it's not worked for whatever myriad of reasons, maybe the charging point isn't working, and you're trying to do your emails and you're trying to write your reports on your smartphone, I'm very sure it's not just me that has found that is a very frustrating experience. And it's in some ways great because it is a live digital poverty experience where you can really understand some of the frustrations that people are having absolutely just day to day, and they just don't have the access. And again, I think it was 85% of the children who received a laptop so far through the scheme in this first 2 years had never had a laptop before. And that's incredible. We're not talking about people who've maybe had access to a device, but, you know, for whatever reason it stopped working. We're talking about people getting that laptop for the first time in their lives. And that's, for me, incredible, because I was very fortunate and I've had access to a keyboarded computer since I think it was about 10. So, you know, this isn't the reality lots of people are facing. Do keep your questions coming in, because I can see one or two are starting to appear. Do use that Q&A button, because don't be shy. I'm sure people have got questions about how the scheme is working, or the research, or the stats, or any other aspect. In thinking about the partnership and collaboration that really makes this work, Catrin, the unsung heroes certainly are some of the staff team who sit within HQ and the colleagues who are in stores and at the forefront of this. How are Currys going about educating your teams about not just the scheme, but also digital poverty, and what those two words mean when you put them together?
Yeah, I mean, it's an ongoing piece of work. You have to have that steady drumbeat going. So it's not something that we talk about once and we're done. It's something that we try to plan in throughout the year. And this week being especially key. We've got a lot of comms going out this week to get people engaged. I think one of the key things we do is it is a consistent question in our colleague questionnaire. So we kind of a couple of times a year we'll questionnaire all colleagues on a number of factors. And one of the questions is always to assess their understanding of digital poverty and our partnership and their sense of pride around what we're doing. The results are always amazing. There's a lot of pride. But what's great about that questionnaire as well is it enables us to drill down to a team level, so we can see where there is a lot of knowledge and engagement, and actually those teams that need engaging a little bit more. Those teams are then usually really proactive at approaching us and asking us to go along to a team meeting. We're able to present about the work that we're doing, and we have some great conversations from those. So one of those examples would be that on our website, we've donated unused advertising space to the DPA, and that came across from, On the Pulse, which is our colleague survey, teams not knowing that much, going along and chatting to them. And it really gets the cogs whirring about, actually, there must be something I can do within my role or on a personal level, and people start to have some great ideas. So that's something that is consistent. We do that all the time. We try to recognise colleagues as well. So our Air store is fantastic with their pennies donations. It's almost a quarter of their customers that choose to make a donation. We share conversion data with stores every month, and there's a real sense of pride. I think everyone wants to try and beat it, but they just can't. But it also shows that the reason they're doing so well is because they're really engaged and they're having conversations with customers at the till point, and they're able to share that experience with other colleagues. Then this week as well, so well over the last 6 weeks, we've been running a campaign with stores to, they've had a platform to go to, it's called Currysville, a platform to go to, and it educates them on the DPA, digital poverty, and challenges them to do a fundraising event this week. We're already seeing all the money come in, which is great. Lots of competition, again, which is great, but also, again, a lot of engagement. So colleagues who might not have known that much about the work we're doing are now really aware of what we're doing, because there is that task there to learn about it, and we'll keep that going. So regular communication. We also every year have a huge conference, which is our peak conference, with about 1,000 colleagues that attend from our retail estate. And the last 2 years, DPA have had a presence there, and that'll happen again this year. And again, that's a great opportunity for those one-to-one conversations with colleagues. So there's loads that we do. It goes beyond colleagues as well. So we kind of look at how we can engage with suppliers. So it must be about a year ago now, we worked with an organisation called Three Hands, and you guys at DPA got involved, and we got some of our suppliers involved to do some listening groups with people who have lived experience of living in digital poverty. And from that, we've then been able to come together as a group of organisations to see how can we be a solution together if we all tackle different aspects of it. So that's a really exciting group. It's a big task, but it just means that it's an opportunity as well for us to get beyond colleagues to get our suppliers involved as well.
Amazing. There's an awful lot goes on in Currys behind the scenes. And of course, it would be remiss not to sort of mention that as digital continues to evolve, as we see this growing digital divide only being exacerbated by the cost of living crisis, we know there's lots of questions about how the Tech4Families programme will continue to grow and adapt. How do you see using some of this research to make sure that we keep this very much jointly remaining relevant and impactful?
Yeah, it's definitely an ambition of ours to get out to more areas and support more families. I know we've got in about a month's time an exciting meeting where we will have time to digest the recommendations and the insights from the report to see where those areas that we should go to next will be, but also look at what else is required. So I think digging into some of the other comments that have come through, how can we better support people through the scheme? So how can we look at skills, connectivity, who can we engage with to provide that bigger package? We already offer some connectivity, but we know that for some people that is going to be a bigger issue. So absolutely a priority area for us. Yeah, exciting conversations happen in October. So I'd just say watch this space, but definitely a priority area for us to roll out further.
Just while we're on that topic, I can see we've got a question from Richard about how other geographical areas and local authorities can be added. And this is something where really we continue to talk to Currys. We make recommendations around the geographical areas to be included in the scheme. If and when there's opportunities to expand that, of course, there's only so many donations, and laptops are not, sadly, getting cheaper at the rate that would be utterly desirable. But do stay in touch with us, and depending on where you are based, if we are able to come to your area, we will be very keen to be in touch with you. And of course, technology is not standing still. So 20 years ago, when we were still known as the Learning Foundation, the aim was to get everyone a desktop computer. That has now become a laptop. And we suspect things will continue to very much change. Becky, did any future technologies or new innovations start to crop up in the conversations that you were having around this research or some of your wider work?
I think it's really exciting that Currys are looking at, this isn't particularly new or innovative, but I think it's really important, given net zero goals, to be looking more at refurbished devices and how, and the great thing about working with a company like Currys is that they can do it at scale. And so any kind of programs which are bringing in refurbished devices back into use, and we now have the kind of the right to repair at a European level, I think is really important. I mean, I think something that kind of worries me is about AI-driven innovations exacerbating digital inequality. So we've got Apple launching their latest, the iPhone 16, which is kind of got embedded AI functionality. And I think one of the concerns that I have is about increasing digital inequalities within user groups. So it being that, like, well, you might have a computer, but it's not fast enough to do all the things that you need it to do. And similarly with phones as well. So I think putting pressure on the people who are designing learning when it comes to kids, ensuring that the design of learning platforms has got all that things like its privacy respecting and all the rest of it, but also ensuring that these platforms can run on slower devices, I think is really important. That so children aren't kind of like excluded just by virtue of not having a fast enough machine or fast enough broadband. So ensuring that the whole kind of ecosystem of digital provision for schools and young people it doesn't leave the kind of the slowest behind in terms of the devices that you need. So actually that's the kind of the opposite of what you might expect me to say, oh, there's lots of really exciting things on the horizon. I think what my concern is that people getting kind of left behind by the pace of change, that it's really important that when a child's being asked to use Sparks Maths or whatever, that these platforms are kind of that run properly on slower devices as well, and that we have a kind of whole technology ecosystem which is kind of supportive of slower devices and refurbished devices, and kudos to Currys for doing that work of bringing refurbished devices back into circulation.
And it is such an important message because, of course, for every child that can't wait to receive the new latest iPhone, there's 10 children out there who desperately are just looking for something that they can create some very basic work on. But I think actually something that surprised me through the research was that we're not just looking at people being able to access Google Classroom or Microsoft or Apple, depending on what their school uses. Almost every subject has a different platform that people are now expected to be able to use at home. And whether that will happen to run on the device that people have is a very different question.
Actually, just one other thing that I've thought of that I thought was really that we didn't expect to see as parents needing the device to keep up with the incessant chain of emails that you seem to get from schools. Like, I don't know, you seem to get a lot of emails from schools nowadays, and a lot you're expected to keep up as a parent with lots of different platforms, and that can be really tough if you're trying to do it on a phone as well. So the fact that it's called Tech4Families for a reason, that the whole parents were saying, oh well, I've got the computer in the hallway, and it just means that I can keep up with the correspondence from the schools as well.
And I think that sort of leads us on to some of the lessons that we can learn from this, exactly, including the fact that actually it's parents as much as children who need the access to the device. Certainly there are some policy recommendations, and if you download the report, right at the top of the chat there is a link to that report. We have, as the DPA, using the research conducted by University of Sussex, crafted 6 policy recommendations, very much around how schools can react to this in terms of checking on whether parents have access to digital within the home, setting homework offline where there's high levels of pupil premium eligibility, how school governors can look at providing devices, certainly in the short term, but also how government look to ensure that parents don't carry that burden of paying for devices where there aren't schemes that can support that charitably. And also that growing pressing need for digital and media literacy, particularly digital, to return to the school curriculum, and media literacy, including that critical thinking and that fake news awareness, to be given much more prominence and dedicated time within the school. So there's a snapshot of some of the things that we're looking to see, and you can read that in much more detail in the report. But Catrin, Becky, if there was one big takeaway that perhaps you had on this in terms of how policymakers could learn from this, what would that be?
I think having a joined up national policy that's about, maybe it's sort of triggered by pupil premium numbers. I think that's kind of probably quite a crude indicator, but it's a very useful one, of that schools doing not kind of due diligence, but doing that work of making sure that pupils have the connectivity they need, and schools being a kind of gateway that if they're in an area where the Tech4Families scheme doesn't provide devices, that the other providers like the Good Things Foundation and other providers are able to look into. I know there's kind of church groups and so on, that the schools kind of step up and do that. There's a kind of national policy and guidance on this.
Yeah, I think for me, I had a recent conversation with my in-laws. I've got 3 nieces, nephews of secondary school age across 3 different schools, and they agreed actually none of the schools took the same approach to making sure there was a device at home. And one of them is in a Tech4Families area, and actually their school was better than some of the others. So I think that was an interesting eye-opener for me. But the other takeaway I think I would share and have from this is that it's not one issue. So we provide the laptop, within this scheme, and some connectivity where it's needed. But it's those other things that have come out about connectivity as a wider issue and skills as a wider issue as well. It's going to take a joined up approach to tackle the issue, and I think this report is great at highlighting that. But it's going to take a lot of us to work together, and policymakers to work together as well to tackle the issue.
Which is such a huge point for us to conclude on. It is about so much more than just the device. The device is an incredibly important gateway, because you don't need connectivity. You can't use your skills if you don't have access to a device, and that affordability and being able to bring that device that's suitable for learning, suitable for creating content into the home is your fundamental building block. But from there, again, we're very grateful to our partners such as Vodafone and Virtual Media O2, who help us with things like SIM cards and mobile data. As part of the scheme, we're able to provide dongles where people don't have access to broadband. And of course, we provide resources with the laptops. As Catrin said, we've got the quick start guide, the very short manual for if you've never used a laptop before. What do you do with this chunk of plastic and metal that's just rocked up at your doorstep? And also signposting to different types of resources, people like IDEA, who provide fantastic micro-credentials, online safety information from our partners at Internet Matters. And it is that kind of partnership which is what's needed, but we need much more of that. Picking up on one of the questions in the Q&A from Ruth, yes, she asks, are we experiencing wait lists? Is our biggest challenge collectively resources? And of course, there are far more people in need in these 7 areas than we can immediately always get laptops out to. But what that does mean is we do have waiting lists, and everyone does and will receive a laptop, but it doesn't mean that sadly, it's not the sort of service where you put in your application and 2 days later it turns up at your door. So we always need to see much more support coming in for Tech4Families to just be able to help even more people. But we can't thank Currys enough for everything that they are doing within their stores to generate those conversions, to tell that message, which even just in itself, as well as raising the funds for Tech4Families, goes such a long way to getting people used to this term and getting people used to the idea that digital poverty exists. Whether that is about tackling the concept that digital access is a luxury, because it's not, as Becky said right at the start, it's essential now, whether it's education, healthcare, anything else, and also for people to self-recognise that it may be something that they are experiencing, and help is out there if you know what you're looking for. I'm going to ask both Catrin and Becky just to give sort of their absolute last thoughts in a moment, just the sort of the 10-second takeaway. But while they have time to think about what that 10-second takeaway is going to be, I've got some calls to action for everyone. Do download and read through the report. You come along today or you're watching this later, presumably because you're interested. Do take a look through. I would urge you. It's a very readable report. Becky and her team have written this in a way that we can all access and understand. So do take a look through it. Do look through the policy recommendations. If you are in Ayrshire, Cumberland, Staffordshire, the coasts of Norfolk or Lincolnshire, the South Wales areas of Neath Talbot and Bridgend, or within Northern Ireland, do take a look at Tech4Families and see whether there's people that you would like to let know that this scheme exists, so that they can apply and perhaps be verified to receive a laptop. And of course, the big call to action is that, as Catrin has alluded to, on Thursday, it is our second End Digital Poverty Day. And much as the Digital Poverty Alliance inaugurated this last year, this is to be owned by everyone. This is not our personal awareness day. This is something that we'd love as many people as possible to get involved in. So hopefully my colleague Joel is going to post some links in the chat, including access to our comms kit, so you can maybe think about whether you or your organisation want to put something out on social media on Thursday. If you are already well along this road and you're holding an event, make sure you've told us. Email Joel, let him know. And it's even not too late to sign up for our gala reception, which is taking place in London on Thursday evening. Again, very kindly sponsored by Currys. Do grab your ticket before ticket sales close. Please also remember, as incredibly grateful as we are to the well over 1 million customers who have made these micro donations to us, we can only do what we do thanks to the generosity of individuals, to companies such as Currys, and to other charities and trusts and foundations who provide us with support. We don't receive government funding. So if you'd like to help us, jump on to digitalpovertyalliance.org, do click on donate, or think about if you've got old tech, if you have listened to Becky's call to action around refurb, we can get those old things out of drawers and get them all cleaned up and sent out to people who need them. So keep that in mind and do get in touch with us. We will wrap it up there, but Becky, Catrin, I'm going to come to each of you with your 10-second takeaway. Catrin, I'm going to start with you first.
I think mine follows on nicely. It's the power of micro donations. So as I said at the beginning, it's 1 million customers who have said yes to just 25 pence or 50 pence. So of course, if you're in a Currys, please do say yes. But it's a widely used mechanism for fundraising for large and small charities up and down the UK. So yeah, do think next time you're at that terminal and it asks if you want to make a micro donation, please click yes.
Fabulous. Thank you. And Becky?
I'd just like to say that this is being involved with DPA and with Currys it gives me a warm feeling, because you can see how everybody's got a part to play, whether it's the customers making donations, whether it's the employees on the shop floor at Currys, whether it's people like Elizabeth, that this is a problem for everybody to solve. And much as we'd like to leave it all up to the politicians, we've all got a part to play.
Thank you each for 2 fantastic calls to action there. It's been fantastic hosting you both today. Thank you so much for giving up your time to be part of this. Thank you so much to everyone who attended. Do watch out on email for some of our upcoming events, and do check out End Digital Poverty Day happening on Thursday. And we'll see you very soon. Take care.